The McClellan part of my family came here in the 1830s. I'm the 6th generation to live on the property here, and which makes my children the 7th generations. So we've always been here. We were in Alabama before that, and Virginia before that. My mother grew up in Marshall, Arkansas, lived in Colorado as a small child, and then came back to Fayetteville. My father was Charles Getty McClellan, and my mother was Juanita Treat McClellan. Well, my father farmed, and then in the 50s he started a meat processing company. So we processed meat and sold meat and butchered for other people. It was called Shade Tree Packing Company, and so all the way up until the years that he died in 1971. I helped with that. I wrapped a lot of pounds of sausage. We sold sausage to all the little grocery stores around. There was only the one store in Cane Hill, and there was no other businesses or any kind of organizations here. There was feed, there was groceries, there was a little bit of everything. They even had material goods, packages of 4 yards of material ladies could buy to sew. There was some nail polish. There was your normal grocery things, very limited supply variety, but there was a little bit of everything. I started to school here in the fall of my 4th grade. We consolidated with Lincoln. When I was in school here, we had 4 grades in one room, and with anywhere from 4 to 6, possibly 7 people in each grade. So it had its advantages, because if I was in the 3rd grade, I could sit there and do the spelling words that the 4th grade was doing. Well, she would get one class started on one subject, for example, and then while they were working on that, she could go to the next grade and get them started on something. I look back with admiration at someone who could manage 4 grades in one room and keep it going. Well, my 1st grade teacher was Kate Finley, and then she was into the 2nd grade, and she broke her hip, and we had a replacement for the rest of the year. Mrs. Reed was my 3rd grade teacher, and Mamie Pridemore from Lincoln was my 4th grade teacher. Well, of course, Cane Hill, I've always said, was like growing up 100 years in the past. Everybody knew everybody. If you weren't connected to someone, you were connected to somebody who was connected to that person. And it was, in many ways, it was like one big, huge family sometimes. We had get-togethers. There were potlucks at the church or at the college building. There was a group, there were card parties. But there was always people getting together somewhere, and now that's totally changed. There's very few of the old families left, and you don't have that sense of community that you used to have. Sunday was the big dinner. You went to church, came home, had dinner, read the Sunday paper, and so often had visitors in the afternoon. But in my family, 1st cousin, 20th cousin, it was all the same. So there were always get-togethers, and it didn't matter, as I said, as long as you were in the family or a member of an extended member of another family, you were there. It was all one big bunch of people. The college was empty for some years. Then Miss Araminta Richardson, it was turned over to her for a while, and she had summer music camps there with her music students. And then it was empty again, and then we formed the Restoration Society to take it over to try to prevent its falling apart from neglect. And we would have fundraisers to make enough money to keep the repairs going and pay the insurance. So none of us wanted to see it just fall apart. But of course, there wasn't really anything we could do other than the basics to keep it going. I think we've been very fortunate that this area has had so much of our history preserved. And I'm very happy that it's being more so than ever before, more done about it in terms of preservation. Well, as I said, Cane Hill was like one big, you knew everyone and everyone knew you. You would do, if anyone needed something, you would be there for them, they would be there for you. It was a very close-knit group of people. I really miss the small town atmosphere that we had then, where everyone did know everybody. Now you don't even know your neighbors, and especially with the advent of cell phones, if your neighbor's cow's out and you don't know him well enough to have his phone number, you can't tell him. We did have, when I was in elementary school, I would say in the summer there would be music here. People would get together and do music out on the porch of the old drugstore building. When I was small, there was a softball teams. My father, or baseball, my father coached the kids' softball teams. Okay. My great-great-great-great-grandfather, William McClellan, was in Tennessee in the early 1800s, I guess, in 1820. Then the family moved from Knoxville to Summerville, Alabama. And his son, his son William had come to Fort Smith to be the Choctaw Indian agent in 1826. While he was here, he called his nephew, he got in touch with his nephew, Charles McClellan McClellan, who was an engineer, and had him come up and do some surveying outside around Fort Smith. So while he was there, he had heard about the area here, and he came here and decided it was a great place, and went back and got the rest of the family, and they moved here in 1833. Cane Hill was settled, for one, because there was an abundance of water. There was only over 100 springs within a square mile, which was an amazing amount of water, apparently. And the dirt here was very rich. Most mountains, apparently, are man-made or volcanic made, and the mountains of the Ozarks were actually mountains when the ocean was here. Therefore, the dirt is very rich because of all the sediment on the bottom of the ocean. Cane, for example, does not usually grow on a hill. Cane grows in the rich bottomlands, but here it grew on the hills because of the rich soil. So because of the water and the rich soil, and there was an abundance of game, this was an excellent place, they thought, to settle. They came here in 1833, and then that was my great-great-grandfather, Colonel John McClellan, and he was on the board, the original board of the college for 1834, and so he was involved in the college all the rest of the years, as far as I know. And he built, they had a house and they planned the new home before the Civil War, and then the war came along and they had to put it on hold. So the house I grew up in was built started the year after the Civil War, and it's known as the White McClellan home, which I lived in until I was 14. It's still standing. It has 8 fireplaces, 12-foot ceilings downstairs, and it's a remarkable house to have grown up in. But he was a business person, and he died in the 1880s. But my family evidently were quite adventuresome to have come here in the middle of nowhere.